For years, the black waitress toiled through back-to-back shifts at a modest diner, her earnings barely enough to get by, yet her kindness never wavered despite the fatigue. When she spotted a frail boy in a wheelchair trembling in the rain outside, she acted without a second thought. She ushered him in, fed him, and ensured he felt secure. Unbeknownst to her, a billionaire across the street observed every moment. That billionaire was the boy's father, and her selfless gesture was about to unlock opportunities she could never have foreseen. Rain poured in unyielding torrents, hammering Lexington Avenue's pavement, transforming the worn sidewalk into a slippery hazard. Streetlights blinked faintly, their weak light scarcely piercing the gloom of the dilapidated buildings along the road. It was after 11 p.m., and the diner should have been closed. But Amara Wilson wasn't one to shut the door on someone in need. Not when life had already dealt them enough blows. She was cleaning the counter, her rich brown skin glistening with sweat after a punishing 12-hour shift, when she caught sight of a small figure outside, a boy slumped in a weathered wheelchair. His dark hair soaked and clinging to his face, a threadbare coat offering little protection from the cold. He sat just past the glowing Lexington Diner sign, clutching a tattered blanket that failed to keep the chill at bay. Amara frowned, setting her rag down. She pushed open the diner door, shivering as the wind hit her. Hey, sweetie," she called gently, crouching beside him. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy flinched at first, then looked up, his blue eyes wide, uncertain, searching. "I'm waiting for my dad," he mumbled, his voice barely audible over the rain. Amara glanced up and down the street. No one. Just the dim glow of a pawn shop's cash for gold. Sign flickering across the road, the sound of tires hissing against wet asphalt. "Where is he?" she pressed, concern creeping into her voice. The boy shrugged, pulling the blanket tighter around himself. Amara exhaled, biting her lip. She'd seen too many nights like this, too many kids left waiting for someone who wasn't coming. "Well, you can't stay out here, not in this mess." She offered a warm smile. "Come inside with me, okay? It's warm, and I've got something special for you." The boy hesitated for a second, but then slowly nodded. Amara gently took hold of the wheelchair's handles and pushed him inside the diner, the warmth hitting them immediately, the scent of buttered toast and burnt coffee wrapping around them like a blanket. She led him to a booth near the radiator, draping a fresh towel over his shoulders before crouching to meet his eyes. "I'm Amara," she said, flashing another grin. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The boy sniffed, his fingers curling around the edge of the blanket. "Elijah." Amara nodded approvingly. "That's a strong name. You hungry?" He nodded hesitantly. Amara didn't wait for him to say more. She was already moving toward the kitchen, pulling out a fresh loaf of sourdough, slicing it with practiced ease. A few minutes later, she set a steaming plate in front of him, grilled cheese, golden and crisp, with a bowl of tomato soup on the side. Her go-to comfort meal, the one her grandmother used to make when the nights were too long and the world felt too cruel. "This one's on me," she said, tucking a napkin into his lap. Elijah's blue eyes widened as he took his first bite, the cheese stretching in long, gooey strings. "This is the best thing I've ever had," he murmured, his voice laced with something close to wonder. Amara chuckled, watching as he devoured the sandwich. "Good food makes everything better," she said lightly, but inside she felt the familiar ache. The one that came when she saw someone so young, so small, already carrying the weight of the world. What she didn't know was that someone was watching. Across the street, a sleek black Bentley sat idle in the shadows, its tinted windows reflecting the diner's neon glow. Inside, Marcus Reed sat in silence, his sharp gray eyes locked onto the scene unfolding before him. At 46, Marcus was a man who had built his empire on control, precision, ruthlessness. Reed Technologies was the beating heart of Baltimore's tech industry, a billion-dollar machine that ran on efficiency, not sentiment, and Marcus, its CEO, had spent years ensuring that nothing, no person, No emotion, no weakness, could interfere with that. Yet here he was, watching, listening, thinking. Elijah was his son, and that woman, that black waitress in a cheap apron in a rundown diner, was feeding his son for free. Marcus's jaw tightened. He had been delayed on a call, an emergency with his investors in Japan, and had told Elijah to wait by the diner for just a few minutes. He hadn't expected this. He reached for his phone, dialing quickly. "Clara," he said when his assistant picked up. "Get down to Lexington Diner. No suits, no heels. I need you there in 20 minutes. There was a pause. "Sir." Marcus's grip on the phone tightened. "Find out everything you can about the woman who just fed my son." Then he hung up. Inside the diner, Elijah was laughing for the first time all night, swinging his legs under the table, soup stains on his chin. Amara wiped it away with a napkin, shaking her head. "Messy eater, huh?" Across the street, Marcus watched, his expression unreadable, his mind already working, already calculating. Because he didn't believe in kindness. He believed in debts, and whether she realized it or not, Amara Wilson had just put him in hers. Amara wiped her hands on her apron, glancing toward the diner window as the rain kept falling, streaking down the glass in uneven trails. Elijah was finishing the last bite of his sandwich, his fingers warm now, no longer trembling. His face had lost that wary tightness, that guarded look that kids his age shouldn't have to wear. She felt a small swell of satisfaction. One more person, one more moment of kindness. That was enough for her. Then the doors swung open. The cold air rushed in first, followed by a woman in jeans and a hoodie, blonde hair tucked beneath a faded Orioles cap. She was out of place in the diner, not because of what she wore, but because of the way she carried herself. Sharp, calculated, assessing everything in a single glance. Amara had worked in this business long enough to recognize someone who wasn't here for the coffee. The woman's gaze landed on Elijah immediately. She softened her expression, crouching beside the boy. "Champ, time to go," she said lightly, though something about her tone was off, too smooth, too rehearsed. Elijah frowned, wiping his mouth with the napkin Amara had given him. "But I haven't finished my milk." The woman, Clara, though Amara didn't know her name yet, tilted her head with a practiced smile. "You can take it with you. Your ride's waiting." Amara's instincts flared. She had seen too many people dismissed, erased, shuffled off without a second thought. Too many moments where someone like her wasn't expected to ask questions. But she always did. She folded her arms, studying the woman carefully. "You know him." The woman's smile didn't falter, but her posture shifted, a subtle tightening of the shoulders, the barest flicker of hesitation. "Yeah," she said smoothly. "I'm his aunt." Amara didn't blink. She turned to Elijah. That true sweetheart. Elijah hesitated just a second too long. Clara's jaw tightened. Amara had grown up in a world where hesitation could mean everything. She knew what fear looked like, what power could do when it moved in silence. She also knew this woman wasn't Elijah's aunt. She crouched beside him, meeting his uncertain eyes. "You good, baby?" she asked, voice softer now, like a shield. "You want to go with her?" Elijah looked between them, his fingers clenching the napkin, tiny knuckles going white. "She's here for my dad," he mumbled. "I guess I have to." Amara didn't move. Her gut screamed at her to push further, to demand more, to make sure this kid was actually safe. But she had been here before, a black woman pressing too hard, asking too many questions, getting the wrong kind of attention. Still, she wouldn't send him away empty-handed. She walked to the counter, grabbed a chocolate chip cookie wrapped in wax paper, and slid it into Elijah's hand. "For the road," she said. His small fingers curled around it, and for the first time that night, he grinned. "Thanks, Amara. You're the best." Amara forced a smile, but something in her chest pulled tight. She watched as Clara wheeled Elijah toward the door, the quiet tension between them thick enough to cut. Then, just before stepping out into the rain, Clara glanced back. She didn't say anything. She just looked, and Amara recognized it for what it was, a warning. Across the street, the Bentley's headlights flashed as Clara approached. The rear door swung open before she could knock, and Marcus stepped out, his broad figure framed by the glow of the diner's neon sign. The moment Elijah was safely inside, buckled in the back seat, Marcus turned to Clara. "Well," Clara exhaled, pushing back her hood. "She's sharp," she admitted. "Didn't buy the aunt story. Almost called me out on it." Marcus's expression didn't change, but she let him go. "She didn't have a choice," Clara said pointedly. "You know how it is. A black woman making a scene. She would have been the one in trouble, not me." Marcus's jaw twitched, but he said nothing. Clara folded her arms. "She's not like the others." Marcus already knew that. He had seen it the moment Amara stepped into the rain without hesitation, the way she had spoken to Elijah like he mattered, not like he was an inconvenience. He had watched people bend, flatter, manipulate for his money, but she hadn't even known it was his son, and she had helped anyway. That made her dangerous. He opened the car door, sliding inside, his voice low. "I want everything on her. Name, address, background." He fastened his seat belt, staring straight ahead. "I want it on my desk by morning." Clara hesitated, just a beat too long. "Sir, by morning." She exhaled, then nodded. "Understood." The Bentley pulled away from the curb, the diner growing smaller in the rearview mirror. But Marcus wasn't thinking about the city lights or the traffic ahead. He was thinking about Amara Wilson and the debt he owed her. Amara trudged home that night, her sneakers soaked from the rain, the chill settling deep into her bones. The diner's meager tips weighed lightly in her pocket, barely enough to cover rent, let alone groceries. But the memory of Elijah's grin stayed with her. Still, something about the encounter gnawed at her, that unease creeping beneath her skin. She had seen it before, that forced, polished smile on the woman's face, the way Elijah hesitated before answering. That wasn't just any stranger picking up a kid. That was someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She climbed the stairs to her one-bedroom apartment on West Fayette Street, where the heat barely worked, and the walls were thin enough to hear her neighbor's TV blaring 3 doors down. The second she shut the door behind her, she leaned against it, rubbing a hand down her face. She had learned a lot to get involved in things that weren't her business, but this felt different. This felt wrong. Before she could shake the feeling, a knock sounded at the door. Amara stiffened. No one came by at this hour. She peered through the peephole and her stomach flipped. A man stood on the other side. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an expensive black coat that looked like it cost more than her entire rent. His face was sharp, his gray eyes cold and assessing, like he had already taken her apart in his mind before she even opened the door. She didn't open it. "Who is it?" A pause, then a voice, deep, controlled, too controlled. "Marcus Reed." That name meant nothing to her. "What do you want?" she asked, keeping her hand on the lock. Another pause. "To talk." Amara's gut screamed, hell no, but curiosity won out. Slowly, she unlatched the door and opened it just enough to see his face clearly. He didn't belong in this building, in this part of the city, in her world. "I don't know you," she said flatly. His expression didn't change. "No, but you know my son." Amara's pulse skipped. She studied him carefully now, the way his presence filled the tiny doorway, the way his coat was still damp from the rain, but his shoes were spotless. This was money power, the kind that could break people without ever lifting a hand. Her grip tightened on the door frame. "Elijah," she said slowly. "You're his father." His nod was barely perceptible. "I was across the street last night." The chill that had settled in her bones turned sharp. "You were watching." "I was." Amara exhaled through her nose. "So what, you here to complain that I fed your kid?" "No." Marcus's gaze flickered, unreadable. "I'm here because I don't believe in charity, but I do believe in paying debts." And then, without waiting for her response, he pulled an envelope from his coat and placed it on her rickety kitchen table. Amara didn't move. Slowly, She glanced at the envelope. Thick, expensive, the kind of paper that'd weight. The kind of paper that meant whatever was inside wasn't small. She swallowed. What is that? A job offer. Amara's brain stalled. She blinked up at him. Oh, what? Marcus tilted his head slightly, as if gauging how much patience he was willing to grant her. A job at Reed Technologies. 6 figures, benefits, the works. Amara let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. You think I want to work for some rich white man who thinks handing out a check makes us even? Marcus didn't flinch. I don't think you want charity, Amara. That's why I'm not offering it. Her name in his mouth made something tighten in her chest. She folded her arms. You don't even know me. I know enough. His voice was steady, unshakable, like a man who never asked, only decided. I know you gave my son food without expecting anything in return. I know you didn't treat him like an inconvenience. I know that's rare. Amara swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way his words knocked something loose in her ribs. She looked back at the envelope, at the ridiculous weight of it sitting on her table. And what exactly would I be doing at Reed Technologies? Making coffee. Marcus's mouth twitched, something like amusement glinting across his face before it vanished. No, you'd be working directly with me. Handling negotiations, public relations. You're good with people. I need someone like that. Amara snorted. You don't need me. You've got a company full of Ivy League grads who'd slit each other's throats for a job like that. Marcus's expression finally shifted, just slightly. That's exactly why I don't trust them. Silence stretched between them, heavy, waiting. Amara could feel the weight of his offer pressing against her, curling around the edges of her pride, her exhaustion, her stubborn refusal to be bought. But 6 figures meant no more late rent, no more living paycheck to paycheck, no more nights wondering how she'd stretch her last 20. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Dive. Never owe these people anything, baby. You know they don't give without taking. Her jaw clenched. Why me? Marcus held her gaze, and for the first time, something in his eyes flickered. Because you saw my son, he said, voice lower now, like it almost cost him something to say. Not my money, not my name. You saw him. Amara's throat tightened. She looked at the envelope one last time, then slowly picked it up. I'll think about it, she murmured. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then gave a curt nod. Good. And then, without another word, he turned and left. Amara stood there long after the door shut, the weight of the envelope in her hands feeling heavier than it should. Because she already knew she wasn't just thinking about it. She was going to say yes. The first day at Reed Technologies felt like stepping into another world. A world where everything gleamed too bright, where money smelled like freshly polished marble, and the air was thick with power. Amara walked into the towering glass building in a department store blazer and thrifted heels, feeling every pair of eyes snap toward her the moment she crossed the lobby. It wasn't the kind of attention she was used to. It wasn't curiosity. It was evaluation, calculation, judgment. She kept her head high, shoulders squared. She had worked in places where people underestimated her before. She knew how to hold her ground. Marcus was waiting in his office, a sprawling, sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A desk so pristine it looked more like an art piece than something actually used for work. He didn't look up when she walked in, just gestured toward the chair across from him. You're late. Amara arched a brow, sitting. By 2 minutes. Marcus finally looked at her, gray eyes sharp. That's 2 minutes I don't get back. Amara exhaled, shaking her head. She had barely been here 5 seconds, and he was already starting. Look, you want me here or not? Marcus leaned back, studying her. That remains to be seen. Before she could fire back, the glass door opened, and Clara walked in, a tablet in hand, her expression unreadable. Amara didn't miss the way the woman's gaze flickered over her, like she was assessing whether or not she belonged here. Spoiler alert, she had already decided she didn't. Miss Wilson. Clara said smoothly. "Welcome to Reed Technologies." Amara met her gaze head on, a slow smile curling her lips. "Oh, we're doing last names. All right. Good to see you again, Miss Summers." Something in Clara's eyes flickered, just for a second, before she turned her attention back to Marcus. "I've prepared the reports for the upcoming negotiations with the Orion Group." She handed him the tablet, barely sparing Amara another glance. "Would you like me to brief her on company protocols?" Marcus didn't even look up. "No, I will." Amara wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a warning. Clara only nodded. But before she left, she hesitated just slightly at the door, glancing back at Amara once more. "Good luck," she murmured. Amara tilted her head. The way she said it didn't sound like encouragement. It sounded like a warning. She didn't have much time to think about it before Marcus was already diving into work. No small talk, no settling in. He pulled up a file, sliding it across the table. "Orion Group," he said. "They want to push through a contract that would cut labor costs by outsourcing jobs overseas. That means layoffs. Thousands." Amara skimmed the file, her stomach turning. "And you want me to what? Convince them not to?" Marcus's gaze didn't waver. "I want you to do what you do best, read people." Amara sat back, crossing her arms. "So let me get this straight. You brought me in because you think I can what? Charm my way into getting these billionaires to grow a conscience." Marcus didn't blink. "No, I brought you in because I think you understand something they don't." Amara narrowed her eyes. "And what's that?" He leaned forward slightly. "That people who have nothing to lose fight the hardest." The words hit something deep in her ribs, something unspoken but true. She stared at him for a long moment, then exhaled, shaking her head. "You know, you talk in riddles a lot for someone who runs a tech empire." For the first time, the corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile but not quite, and then, just like that, the moment passed. "Meeting's at noon," he said, standing. "Try not to be late." Amara rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She had a job to do. The conference room was colder than the rest of the building, all steel and glass, like it had been designed to make people uncomfortable. Amara sat beside Marcus at the long mahogany table, facing three men in tailored suits, each one radiating the kind of confidence that came from knowing they could buy and sell entire lives with a single stroke of a pen. The leader of the group, Charles Wentworth, 60, white hair slicked back like old money arrogance, was a birthright, barely even looked at her. Amara had dealt with men like him before, the ones who only saw value in people who looked like them. She didn't let it show. Marcus opened the conversation, cutting straight to the point. "You want to move production to Taiwan. You say it'll save costs, increase efficiency." He paused. "I say it'll destroy a workforce that's built this company's infrastructure for over a decade." Wentworth gave a slow, thin-lipped smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "You misunderstand, Marcus. It's not personal, it's just business." Amara's fingers curled beneath the table. "Are not personal." She had heard that phrase too many times in her life. When her landlord raised rent overnight because developers wanted to revitalize the neighborhood. When her mother lost her job at the textile plant because they found cheaper labor overseas. When companies like this shut down communities and called it strategy. She smiled, but there was steel in it. "Funny," she said, tilting her head, "because it's always just business, until it's your job on the line." Wentworth's eyes snapped to her for the first time. Marcus didn't interrupt, he just watched. Wentworth exhaled sharply through his nose, like he had better things to do than entertain the help. "And you are?" Amara didn't blink. "Amara Wilson, Reed Technologies." He gave her a once-over, and she saw the exact moment he dismissed her. She didn't care. She had been underestimated before. Wentworth leaned back in his chair, waving a hand. "Look, sweetheart, I get it. You think we're the villains here, but this is about numbers. It's about what makes the most sense." A sweetheart. Amara's jaw locked. She leaned forward, matching his posture. All right, she said coolly. Let's talk numbers. She slid a document across the table. This is a breakdown of what happens when you offshore production. Sure, you cut costs at first, but in 3 years, when labor demands rise, your new manufacturing hub gets expensive. You'll spend millions restructuring, rehiring, and dealing with PR disasters when the headlines read American workers betrayed for profit. She tapped the paper. That's not a guess. That's market analysis. Wentworth glanced at the file but didn't touch it. Amara held his gaze, didn't blink, didn't flinch. You can make the smart choice now, she said, voice calm, deadly. Or you can explain to your investors why you're short. Term gains just cost them their long-term returns. Silence. Then, finally, Wentworth exhaled, picked up the paper, scanned it. Marcus didn't smile, but Amara could feel the shift in the room. She had just changed the game. Wentworth set the document down, his expression unreadable. We'll revisit the proposal. Marcus nodded. See that you do. The meeting ended shortly after. As Wentworth and his associates left, Amara felt the weight of Marcus's gaze on her. She turned to him. Well, Marcus studied her for a long moment, then said, I knew I hired you for a reason. Amara smirked. Damn right you did. And for the first time since she walked into Reed Technologies, she felt like she belonged. 2 months in, Amara had found her rhythm at Reed Technologies. Or at least, she thought she had. She had learned how to navigate the halls of power, how to stand her ground in a world that barely acknowledged her existence. She had faced down Charles Wentworth and walked out victorious. She had proved to Marcus and to herself that she wasn't just here as a symbolic gesture, a corporate pet project. She was here because she belonged. But victories at the top were short-lived, because now the company was in trouble. Amara was in trouble, and someone had just set her up to take the fall. She had just come back from a client meeting when Clara caught her in the hallway. We have a problem, she said, her tone sharp, urgent. Amara frowned. Define problem. Clara didn't answer. She just handed Amara a printed email. Amara's stomach sank the second she saw the contents. It was a company report, classified financial data. It had been leaked to the press, and the email forwarding it had Amara's name on it. The words blurred, the air in the room shifted, turned dense, heavy. She forced herself to breathe. This isn't mine. I know, Clara said, but someone wants it to be. Amara's pulse thrummed in her ears. She had been in enough situations like this to know how fast they spiraled. A black woman in a powerful white space didn't get the benefit of the doubt. She didn't get to be innocent until proven guilty. She was guilty the second they said she was. She gripped the paper, scanning it again. Who else has seen this? Marcus? Clara said. And the board. Amara's breath hitched. The board. She had barely clawed her way into this company, and now they were about to rip her out. Marcus's office was colder than usual, or maybe it was just the way he was looking at her. His hands were clasped on his desk, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, those sharp gray eyes, were studying her, weighing her. Amara felt something clench in her chest. Tell me I wasn't wrong, he said, low, controlled. Amara slammed the email onto his desk. This isn't me, Marcus. He didn't look at the paper. He didn't need to. I want to believe that, he said, voice steady. But this is a serious leak, Amara. Millions in exposure, stock drops, investigations. You understand how bad this is. Amara leaned forward, hands planted on his desk. I understand perfectly. I also understand that whoever did this knows exactly what they're doing. I was the easy target, right? The outsider, the black woman with too much confidence. Who's going to believe me over some executive who's been here for 10 years? Marcus didn't flinch, but he didn't disagree either. The silence stretched too long. Amara's nails dug into her palms. Do you think I did this? Marcus held her gaze. No. The breath she had been holding finally released. But he continued, the board does. Amara swore under her breath, pacing. She could feel the noose tightening. So what happens now? She asked, forcing the words out. Marcus exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw. We'll find the real leak. Amara froze. We. Not you. Not me. We. For the first time since she walked in, the ice in her chest cracked. Marcus stood, slipping his suit jacket back on. Clara is already running a trace on the email source, but it was routed through an external server. Someone covered their tracks well. He met her gaze. We'll have to be smarter. Amara crossed her arms, leveling him with a look. And what if we don't find them in time? What if the board decides to cut me loose? Marcus's jaw tightened. Then we make them regret it. Amara studied him. Marcus Reed was not the kind of man who made promises, but for the first time, she believed him. And whoever had set her up, they were about to find out exactly what kind of fight they had just started. The truth unraveled faster than they expected. Amara and Clara worked through the night, combing through server logs, tracing digital breadcrumbs. Whoever had framed her had been careful, but not careful enough. The leak had been routed through a secondary account, one tied to James Harrow, a senior executive with 10 years at Reed Technologies and a reputation for keeping his hands clean while letting others do his dirty work. By morning, they had enough evidence to bury him. Amara stormed into the boardroom before they could summon her like a criminal. The air was thick with tension, dozens of polished, powerful men in tailored suits staring her down like she was already gone. Marcus sat at the head of the table, unreadable. Miss Wilson, one of the board members, an older man with a thin, lipped smirk, gestured to the empty seat across from them. I assume you know why you're here. Amara didn't sit. She never planned to. I do, she said, voice steady. And I assume you all know you're about to make a very expensive mistake. A flicker of amusement crossed Marcus's face, but he didn't interfere. Miss Wilson. The board member started, but she cut him off. I was an easy target, right? She said, pacing. The new hire, the outsider, the one you could pin this on and sweep under the rug. She stopped, placing a thick folder on the table. Except you picked the wrong one. She slid the folder toward them. Silence stretched as they skimmed the documents, their expressions shifting from dismissive to something closer to alarm. James Harrow sat 2 seats down, his face paling by the second. These are traced emails. Amara continued. Bank transfers, call logs with reporters, all of them linked to Harrow, not me. She crossed her arms. And before you ask, yes, our legal team already has copies. And so does the press. So if you want to talk about damage control, I'd start there. A murmur swept through the room. Harrow shot to his feet, his voice a little too sharp, too desperate. This is ridiculous. She's bluffing. Amara turned to Marcus, lifting a brow. Am I? Marcus finally spoke, his voice as sharp as cut glass. No, she's not. The words landed like a blow. Harrow's mouth snapped shut. Marcus stood, adjusting his cufflinks. Effective immediately, James Harrow is terminated. Full legal action will be pursued. He let the weight of his words settle, before turning his attention to the rest of the room. And if anyone else in this company thinks they can play the same game, let this serve as a warning. The silence that followed was absolute. Amara didn't smile. She didn't need to. She had won. 2 weeks later, she stood beside Marcus at Elijah's graduation. The boy grinned up at her from his wheelchair, holding his diploma like it was the greatest prize in the world. I told you I'd make it, he said, chest puffed out. Amara laughed, ruffling his hair. Never doubted it for a second. Marcus watched them, his usual cool exterior softer somehow. You did good, Wilson, he said. She smirked. Damn right I did. Elijah glanced between them. Are you guys going to hug or something? Marcus sighed. Absolutely not. Amara rolled her eyes. God, no. Elijah just grinned. For the first time in ages, Amara felt she'd created something lasting, something truly significant. And her journey was far from over. Years later, Amara Wilson sat in the executive suite of Reed Technologies, her name etched on the door as Vice President of Corporate Strategy. What began as a job, a test, had grown into a calling. Under her guidance, the company broadened its ethical labor programs, introduced mentorship schemes, and forged ties with minority-owned businesses citywide. A new community center, named the Wilson Reed Foundation, supported education and job prospects for underserved youth. At its opening ceremony, Elijah, now a college freshman, stood by her side, beaming like the boy who once received a warm meal in a diner. Because kindness, that was the investment that never failed to yield returns. Join us to spread meaningful stories by clicking like and subscribe. Be sure to activate the notification bell to begin your day with deep lessons and genuine compassion.